I realize now why the discs comprise the analogous to the copper, excuse me, the current coil of an electromechanical watt-hour meter, while the long, 50-mile long, as William Lyne describes it, windings around the tube encasement made of iron constitute the voltage coil, because we have now been able to make the current lag behind the voltage because the current is on the inside, and current coils tend to be very stout and very short. Well, it sounds like that's what these copper discs on the inside are. Stout and short. Not a whole lot of windings going on in there. Whether we have pistons reciprocating or whether we have grooved discs counter-rotating. And I can see using a copper axle, or no, a bronze axle, upon which are supported copper discs set in, and it has jewel bearings on either, or ball bearings, whatever, on either side of this iron encasement, and then counter-rotating to that is an aluminum drum outfitted with more copper discs interspersed or interleaving among the axle-oriented discs. And they all have their radial grooves. And what Tesla said was that but that's because it was lined up with a grooved face, polar face of a magnet, the core of the electromagnet. Yeah, it was 2 grooves on the disc for every groove on the core of the electromagnet, so that one of those grooves in the disc was in the valley between the 2 grooves on the core of the electromagnet, and the other was right dead on the ridge to that serrated core of the electromagnet. So he was using the idea of the ferrofluid videos on YouTube, in which the magnetic field comes out the ridges and avoids the valleys if you make serrations on your core. So I have to wonder if there are grooves on the inside of this iron encasement that go around the circumference of the tube, the inside, the interior, and that they are arranged in stacked rings, each of grooves, each groove being in alignment with each disc. No. No, every other disc. So how can we have it counter-rotating? Unless the discs are paired. So they're not interleaved, one every other one is counter-rotating, but 2 together rotate together, followed by the next 2 that counter-rotate. That way, of each pair, one will be matched with the ridge on the interior of the iron encasement, and the next of the pair will be in the valley, both rotating one way, and then the next serrated edge versus valley of the interior grooves of the tube will have the next counter-rotating pair of copper discs, counter-rotating to the previous pair. So now every other ridge on the interior of the iron casing either has a pair of discs going one way or the other way, and each valley for that matter, every other valley, every other ridge. That makes more sense. And aluminum, the aluminum barrel, is simply to make sure that all the action doesn't happen in the aluminum, but prefers instead to go away from the aluminum, either into the iron encasement or into the copper discs themselves. So the copper discs have to have commutators or something, brushings to pick up the current coming off of them. But in an alternating fashion, connected in series to the output wires, while the coil surrounding the iron encasement is connected in parallel to this output. That means the coil of wire around the iron encasement, the 50 mile or 90 mile long, is a single coil, wound one way, monopolar. I can't see any advantage to do it any differently. Wow, that simplifies the design. That gets pretty simple. Still have to worry about the inlet ports and the outlet ports of compressed air, though. Yeah, I gotta work on that some more. Because they're the ones spinning the two sets of discs, the aluminum drum versus the axle. Oh. So the axle should be aluminum. No, wait a minute. No. If I'm going to be pairing these discs in pairs that run together, one should be aluminum and one should be copper. And I bet I know which one is aluminum and which is copper. The aluminum goes in the valley of the serrations on the interior of the iron tube, and the copper goes along the ridge itself, the ridge line itself, the tip. So the barrel is bronze. No. Can it be? Maybe the barrel is non-existent. Good luck. Yeah, I have to think about that. Well, it seems to me that both the barrel and the drum, the axle and the barrel drum have to be both copper and aluminum. So it depends on which disc is set into it. So positioned at that location of the drum in which the aluminum disc is attached, then that section of the drum is aluminum. So that means the drum is put together by alternating sections of an aluminum section, and it's pretty much a ring, a flat ring. Aluminum ring versus the next would be copper, and each one has its own disc set in, well, no. Actually, no. It would be the width of two discs, and then it would be aluminum versus copper, because actually, no, wait a minute. Oh, we'd almost have to, oh, no, it's going to be all one type. So the axle is going to be all one material, either copper or aluminum, and the drum will be the opposite. Yeah, that's the only way to work out the geometry. Just doing it in my head, I'll have to do it on paper. Well, if I had to take a guess, I would say the drum would have to be copper, and the axle would have to be aluminum. Because it's serving as the amperage, the amperage coil, while the coil winding outside the iron encasement is the voltage coil, so they have to be near each other. And in this case, rotating relative to each other. That's something new. Something you don't see in an electromechanical water ammeter, that's for sure. So the aluminum is to make sure that we don't have a tendency for the magnetic field, and I guess the electric field as well, to jump across copper plates, copper discs between one and the next. It might. It might arc. The electric field might arc, especially if it's saturated. So maybe they have to be insulated discs in between each one. Oh dear. Maybe I don't have discs. Oh, I never did figure out where to put the magnets. That's right, I kind of left that part out of the picture, didn't I? Okay, there you go. So, if they're in pairs, so now we've got a ferromagnet disc alternating with a copper disc, and they rotate in pairs, unless it's triples. Yeah, I don't know about that. Well, it could, and the magnet would be in the valley of the grooves on the interior surface of the iron encasement, and the copper would be on the edge. So you'd have 3 to a set, and then so it would be magnet, copper, magnet disc, and then the next one would be copper, magnet, copper. They'd counter-rotate each set of 3s. That means the axle is aluminum and the drum is aluminum. There you go. Finally. Yeah, I always left out the part about the permanent magnet. Where does that go? Wasn't quite sure where to put it. Alright. I guess I can sleep on that one now.